What's up, everybody? Here's another TechBiz tutorial. Today we're going to learn about something called information literacy, which is just a way to use the internet and all of its resources in a way that is helpful and useful to us. So the first thing we're going to talk about real quickly here is how to read a web address. And so what I did was I just chose a web page, nationalgeographic.com. It's a website probably everybody's heard of. Everybody should have heard about it. And when we're going to first look at this, this is useful if you're doing some research and you're using the internet and you get to a website, maybe you don't know if the information is valid or not. And so sometimes looking at the address alone can be useful. So you need to be able to identify some things. So to start off with, we have the URL, which is the Uniform Resource Locator. That's the actual web address where the site you're looking for is located. And when we're talking about a URL, we're talking about the entire address that you would be using. So everything from the HTTP all the way to the .com. That's going to be our URL right here. So just to illustrate that, I'll copy and paste that right next to it. The domain name is like the overall identity of the actual website. And basically what the domain is going to be is it's going to be your name followed by the .com or whatever the extension is. So here we have the domain. Like maybe we're in one of the websites inside of National Geographic that talks about explorers. So you might see nationalgeographic.com/explorers. In this case, your URL would switch. You would change it to explorers, but the domain would still be the same because it's just nationalgeographic.com. We'll get to the extension, and basically the extension is going to be the last part of your domain. So in this case it's .com. Sometimes you might see them be .gov or .edu or .whatever, and that's going to be the extension at the end. And sometimes you can look at a .org and you might think it's going to be a valid website, but you can't always go by that. But usually looking at the web address, you can kind of tell, if it's a clean looking website name, there's not a whole lot of extra slashes in it, or like personal names or nicknames or things like that. It could be a valid website. So that's the first thing I wanted to show you, just how to read the web address. URL is the whole address. The domain is just the name of the site followed by the extension. And then the extension is .com, .gov, .org, whatever it's going to be. Next we have our useful sites, just a couple of web pages that can also kind of help you to determine if a website is valid or not. The first one I wanted to show you is easywhois.com. This is kind of useful because we can go in here and all you have to do is put in the domain name. So I'm just putting in nationalgeographic.com. I hit enter. Sometimes it takes a little while, and when this comes up, it gives you a whole lot of useful information about the website. Some websites can have some of this information blocked, but for the most part this is pretty useful. I can look in here and I can see the domain name. It tells me that information up there. It tells me who I can contact about a website if I have any questions, or a phone number. It also tells me the registrant name and the registrant organization. So I look on here and see that this website is in fact owned by National Geographic Society. It's not a webpage owned by somebody else made to look like it belongs there. I also have a mailing address, and so if I really wanted to, I could contact those people and see if the information was correct, or I could look at this and say, okay, this is a legitimate website. I can probably take their information, seriously. So that is on a website called easywhois.com, and that can, if you're ever looking at stuff for an online research topic, maybe the information from a website looks a little sketchy, you can look through that and see if that could give you some tips for whether or not you should use that as part of your research. The other one that I wanted to go and show you is called archive.org. And archive.org has this called the Wayback Machine. And this one wants the actual full URL for it. So I'm going to go back to my Word document here, and I'm going to copy my original URL that I had, and I'm going to paste it up here. I don't want the Explorers. So this is the original URL. I click Browse History, and sometimes if you're on a website, you can look through it and see how it's changed through time. If this was all about National Geographic now, but maybe a year ago it was about something completely different, then that tells you it's just somebody's personal website and they're changing the topics. Maybe they're using it for a website creation project or something. So I'm going to go way back to 1999, and I'm going to choose one of the dates that they have selected here. I'm just going to choose the 20th, and they have a couple snapshots, and when you click on this, it takes me to my site and shows me what this website looked like approximately in 1999. And sometimes it's just kind of cool to look at this Wayback Machine and to look at websites that you go to often and to see how much. It's amazing how much the internet has changed throughout time. You know, we have all the dynamic slideshows and pictures and interactive Web 2.0 content. And in 1999, it's kind of interesting to see, you know, it was more like just a newspaper setting where you had your links and you could click on those things. But you can click on that information and kind of see how this website has changed through time. So I looked at that earlier time. You know, now I'm on here for June 16th, 2004, you know, which is 5 years later, and I can see the website has changed quite a bit again in content and layout, but it's still nationalgeographic.com. I recognize the magazine, so again, that tells me that this probably is going to be a decent website. So again, this was a quick tutorial showing you information literacy, how to tell whether or not we can take a website seriously or not. We looked at how to read the web address. We have the URL, the domain, the extension. We talked about two useful sites, easywhois.com, where we type in the domain and it tells us a lot of information about who owns the website, and also archive.org, which shows us the history of that website and how it's changed over time. So hopefully you find these tools useful and you enjoyed this tutorial. Thanks for joining me on another TechBiz tutorial.